Pan is meant to be a sequel and a sort of alternate timeline to the story of Peter Pan, which we've seen many times before. I mean, you have the books, you also have the 2 Disney animations, you have Hook, we have the 2003 live action version, we have the story of Finding Neverland about the author, and we even have that NBC thing that they tried to do with a play. But here we have Joe Wright, who has done these bad boys, trying to make something of the story of Peter Pan, which isn't a bad thing to do, to take an old property and try to put your own spin on it. It's okay, as long as you know what you're doing. So, let's get into the good, the bad, and everything in between about Pan. Now, I'll start off by saying that the film did have a pretty big budget, to the point that I think it was a little bit too much, but nonetheless they used it, and they clearly used it for the visuals, which is what people like to use it for their films. But the movie does have great visuals. However, it's difficult to say that in this day and age of cinema, because almost every movie has great visuals, because they all spend a lot of money on their visuals. However, those films that still have great visuals within the film themselves, they tend to overdo it. This movie does the same thing, to the point that you kind of get numb. Even though they're good visuals, they just overdo it a little bit too much. That doesn't mean that they don't do a good job with the color schemes and even having those moments, like, you know, when you're a kid and you watch a film that doesn't necessarily need to be the greatest movie, but there are scenes and visuals within the film that evoke wonder within you as a child, and you're like, oh my goodness, this is gonna stick with me. This movie kind of had that, and when I sat down, I was a little iffy with it, but I went with it, and the beginning actually had me for a bit, and where you had these scenes where they were jumping off from ceilings and like taking people, there was this whole air race that was happening between a pirate ship and a World War II fighter jet, and I was like, man, this is really interesting. Then I don't know what happens. I was hoping that it was going to take that wonder and kind of carry it and build it up, but instead it becomes something where I don't want to say it's like, oh, it's Oz the Great and Powerful and Pirates of the Caribbean. It definitely feels like those two, but it's just that it becomes very bland, and I know the exact point where it happened. It's after you have that intro, they get into Neverland, and I kid you not, out of nowhere, even though this is taking place during World War II times, Joe Wright decides, hey, I can be a little Baz Luhrmann, and just starts having everyone chant, "Smells like Teen Spirit," and I was like, this isn't happening right now. And then all of a sudden, Blitzkrieg Bop starts happening, and I'm like, what is going on? So not only were you going to get the visuals, which were going to be way over the top, you then get this tone, which is way over the top, and then you have the acting, which, look, Blackbeard is played by Hugh Jackman. Everybody likes Hugh Jackman. Sure, he's a Broadway actor, but there is a level where you are just overacting. And then you get to the point where you have Garrett Hedlund playing Huck. The dude was like Jack Nicholson if he was trying to play a cowboy, and then Garrett Hedlund was just trying to impersonate that. Added with that was several moments where they get smacked or just thrown off, and it was several situations where you're like, you shouldn't be happy here, but since it's a kid's film, obviously a person will get slapped in the face and still go, wink. And it got to the point where I was like, I have no idea what direction you're going here for. Another character was Rooney Mara's Tiger Lily, which I know had a lot of controversy, and I'll just say that, well, one, she didn't fit with her own tribe that she was supposed to in the film, with her combat boots and everything. However, the interesting thing about her is that I was watching her, and, you know, I was zoning out in the movie at a certain point, and I was like, hey, I know you're Kate Mara's sister, but dang, you look so much like Emily Blunt. The ending of the movie also ends up becoming very irrelevant and pointless, because not only do they do that thing that a lot of big budget movies do, where they just bombard you in that third act with all of these CGI explosions and all of that stuff that, you know, by the time the movie's over, you just forget about it. Add this movie to the list of those third act things that you're going to forget, but you also have this ideology in where they're like, you know, we're not technically the same timeline, but we're going to rely heavily on the original timeline, and then be a cop-out because we're going to rely so heavily on wanting a sequel that we're going to keep everything for the sequel, and thus make this first one, Pan, completely pointless and void and empty. Now, to clarify, I'm not saying that it's the worst of the year. Again, I enjoyed some aspects of it, but a lot of it was just like, you either got super lazy and just relied on, hey, look at all this color that we can throw into it, and you kind of lost a story that could have possibly been great. But Garrett Hedlund, man, I don't know what you were doing in this movie. Anyways, I'm curious your thoughts. If you checked out this film, definitely let me know down below what you thought about it. If you are a Peter Pan fan, definitely let me know how you felt about this film, and which one is your favorite adaptation of Peter Pan, be it the Broadway, or be it the original stories, or just the animation. We can discuss all of that below, as well as anything else having to do with film, and until next time, I'll be seeing you guys later.